Elena Vance had spent 5 years perfecting the art of being invisible. She was just a temporary personal assistant, a ghost in a beige suit standing in the corner of a room filled with sharks. But invisibility has a price, and silence has a limit. In a high-stakes negotiation with Lorenzo Moretti, the most ruthless capo in New York, the air was thick enough to choke on. When Elena's phone buzzed in her pocket, she made a fatal error. She didn't just answer it. She answered it in a dialect that hasn't been spoken in these circles for a decade. She thought she whispered. She was wrong. The negotiation didn't end with a handshake. It ended with 3 words from the boss: "Don't let her leave." The private dining room of La Stella Nera smelled of aged mahogany, expensive scotch, and suppressed violence. It was a scent Elena Vance knew better than she cared to admit, though she did her best to look like she belonged in a cubicle, not a crime lord's den. She stood 3 feet behind Marcus Sterling, the nervous CEO of Sterling Logistics. Marcus was sweating. The perspiration had already soaked through the collar of his starch-stiff shirt, a telltale sign of a man who had borrowed money he couldn't pay back and was now trying to negotiate interest rates with a shark. Across the table sat the shark. Lorenzo Enzo Moretti didn't sweat. He didn't fidget. He sat with the relaxed posture of a predator who knows the cage is locked from the outside. He was younger than the rumors suggested, perhaps 32, but his eyes were ancient. They were the color of cold espresso, dark and devoid of empathy, tracking every micro-expression on Marcus Sterling's face. "Mr. Sterling," Enzo said, his voice a low baritone that vibrated through the crystal glasses on the table. "You are boring me. You promised the shipping routes were clear. My associates tell me otherwise." It's a temporary customs issue, Mr. Moretti," Marcus stammered, his hands shaking as he reached for his water. "My assistant here, Miss Vance, has the updated schedules." Elena stiffened. "Don't look at me," she pleaded silently. "Keep me out of this." She stepped forward, eyes cast down, placing a blue folder on the table. She moved with practiced mediocrity, shoulders hunched slightly, gait unsure. It was a disguise she wore like armor. Enzo didn't even look at her. To him, she was furniture. "I don't care about schedules, Marcus. I care about the $2 million in cargo sitting in a Newark holding bay." Enzo's right-hand man, a towering figure named Luca with a scar running through his left eyebrow, poured more wine into Enzo's glass. The tension in the room was a physical weight. Elena retreated to her corner, clutching her purse. She needed this job. She needed the anonymity. Sterling Logistics was boring, safe, and legal. Being here, in the presence of the Moretti family, was playing with fire. Then, the unthinkable happened. The burner phone in the inner pocket of her blazer buzzed. It wasn't her work phone. It was the other phone, the one that only 3 people in the world had the number for. Panic flared in her chest. If that phone was ringing, it was an emergency. A drop-everything-and-run emergency. Marcus was blathering on about port authorities. The noise covered the hum, but she had to know. She turned slightly toward the wall, shielding her face from the table, and slipped the phone out. Caller ID, Zia Rosa. Her heart stopped. Rosa wouldn't call unless the safe house had been compromised. Elena brought the phone to her ear, cupping her hand tight. She pressed the answer button and whispered, barely an exhale of breath. "Pronto? Que succeed? Hello? What's happening?" The voice on the other end was frantic. "They found the car, Aaron. You need to move." Elena's eyes widened. She slipped instantly, fatally, into the tongue of her childhood. Not just Italian, but the specific, sharp dialect of the Sicilian coastal hills. "Non preoccuparti. Chiudo tutto. Stai ferma," she hissed rapidly. "Don't worry. I'm shutting it down. Stay put." She hung up and shoved the phone back into her pocket. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She needed to leave. She needed to get Marcus to wrap this up so she could disappear. She turned back to the room, composing her face into the mask of the dull assistant. The room was silent. Dead silent. Marcus had stopped talking. Luca had stopped pouring the wine. And Lorenzo Moretti was looking at her. He wasn't looking at her like she was furniture anymore. He was looking at her the way a jeweler looks at a diamond he suspects is fake, or stolen. The intensity of his gaze was so sharp, she felt it physically cut her skin. "Miss Vance, was it?" Enzo asked softly. Elena gripped her clipboard. "Yes, sir. Apologies. Family emergency." "Family," Enzo repeated, tasting the word. He stood up slowly. He was taller than he looked, sitting down, over 6'3", broad-shouldered in a tailored charcoal suit. He walked around the table, ignoring Marcus entirely. He stopped 2 feet from her. The scent of sandalwood and gunpowder assaulted her senses. "You speak Italian," he stated. It wasn't a question. "A little," she lied, her voice trembling just the right amount. "My grandmother, she taught me a few phrases." Enzo tilted his head. "That wasn't a phrase, Miss Vance. And that wasn't school-taught Italian. That was Palermitano dialect, old dialect, the kind you only hear in the kitchens of very old, very specific families." Elena's blood ran cold. She forced a confused smile. I picked it up from her. I really must apologize, Mr. Sterling. I think I need to step out." Enzo turned his back on her, walking back to his chair. For a second, she thought she was clear. She thought he had dismissed her as a curiosity. He looked at Marcus Sterling. "The deal is off, Marcus. Get out." Marcus blinked, stunned. "Mr. Moretti, please." "Get out." Marcus scrambled, grabbing his briefcase. "Elena, come on." Elena turned toward the heavy oak doors, her legs feeling like lead. She was 3 steps away from freedom, 3 steps away from the hallway, the elevator, and the street where she could vanish. "Luca," Enzo said calmly. "Boss?" "Escort Mr. Sterling to the elevator." Enzo picked up his wine glass, swirling the dark red liquid. "But Miss Vance stays." Elena froze, her hand hovering over the door handle. Marcus stopped. "Excuse me?" "She's my employee." Enzo looked up, his eyes black and bottomless. "Not anymore. Don't let her leave, Luca." The heavy oak doors slammed shut, sealing the sound of Marcus Sterling's cowardly retreat. He hadn't even argued. He had looked at Luca's gun, looked at Elena, and chosen self-preservation. Now, it was just the 2 of them. Elena stood with her back to the door, her hand still gripping the cold brass handle. She calculated the odds. Luca was outside the door. Enzo was 10 feet away. There was a steak knife on the table, but Enzo was faster than her. She could tell by the way he held himself. Physical confrontation was a last resort. She had to play the role. The terrified civilian. "Mr. Moretti," she said, allowing her voice to crack. "I don't understand, unless this is about the shipping manifest." "Sit down," Enzo said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. She hesitated, then walked to the chair Marcus had vacated. She sat on the edge, knees pressed together, clutching her purse where the burner phone burned a hole in the fabric. Enzo poured a second glass of wine and slid it across the mahogany table toward her. "Drink." "I don't drink on the job." "You don't have a job anymore, Elena. Or should I call you by your real name?" The air left her lungs. "He's fishing," she told herself. "He doesn't know. He suspects, but he doesn't know. I am Elena Vance. I was born in Ohio. I have a social security number and a rental agreement in Queens." Enzo laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "I'm sure you do. And I'm sure the paper trail is impeccable, but paper doesn't have an accent." He walked around the table, leaning against the edge so he loomed over her. "Do you know how long I've been hunting the remnants of the Rossi family, Elena?" She kept her face blank, but the name struck her like a physical blow. Rossi. The family her father had served. The family that had been wiped out in a night of fire and blood 7 years ago. "I don't know who that is," she whispered. "Liar," Enzo murmured, leaning closer. He reached out, his fingers brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His touch was electric, terrifying. "You answered that phone with the cadence of a soldier, not a granddaughter. Clear the line. Stay put. That is tradecraft." He suddenly grabbed her wrist, the one near her purse. His grip was iron. "Give me the phone." "It's private." "Nothing happens in this room that is private from me." He wrenched the purse from her grasp, unzipping it with one hand, while holding her pinned with his gaze. He pulled out the cheap burner phone. He scrolled through the log. "One number saved," he noted. "No name, just a symbol." He looked at her. "Who is on the other end?" "My grandmother," she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. Real tears? Fake tears? Even she wasn't sure anymore. "She has dementia. She wanders off." Enzo studied her face. He was looking for the crack in the porcelain. He unlocked the phone and hit redial. Elena stopped breathing. If Rosa answered, the phone rang. Once, twice, click. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Elena exhaled internally. Good girl, Rosa. The burner protocol worked. Once the call ended, the SIM fried itself. Enzo lowered the phone, looking impressed despite himself. A burner that kills itself. Sophisticated for a girl from Ohio with a sick grandmother. He tossed the phone into a glass of water, watching it sizzle and die. "You are a mystery, Miss Vance." "And I hate mysteries." Enzo walked back to his chair and sat down, buttoning his jacket. "Here is the situation. You saw something tonight. My face, my business. And you spoke a language that connects you to my enemies. I cannot let you walk out that door." "Are you going to kill me?" Elena asked, dropping the stutter. Her voice was steady now. If the innocent act failed, the cold pragmatism might work. Enzo's eyebrows shot up. "There she is, the steel beneath the silk." He smirked. "No. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't have made it to the chair. But I can't let you go either. Not until I know who you really are." He pressed a button under the table. The doors opened, and Luca stepped in. "Bring the car around," Enzo ordered. "We're going to the estate." "The girl?" Luca asked, eyeing Elena. "She comes with us." Elena stood up. "I'm not going anywhere with you. This is kidnapping." Enzo stood up and buttoned his coat. He walked to her, stopping so close she could feel the heat radiating off him. "Kidnapping is such an ugly word," he whispered, his lips inches from her ear. "Think of it as protective custody. Because if you truly are who I think you might be, Elena, walking out that door alone is a death sentence. My enemies are looking for the lost Rossi heir, too, and they aren't as polite as I am." He offered her his arm, a mockery of a gentleman. "Shall we?" Elena looked at his arm, then at Luca's gun by the door. She had skills, combat training, evasion tactics, but in a closed room with two armed men? Suicide. She needed a better environment. She needed to bide her time. She didn't take his arm. She walked past him, head high, toward the door. "I'll walk," she said icily. As she passed him, she saw a flicker of something in Enzo's dark eyes. Amusement? Respect? Or something more dangerous? "I'm sure you will," Enzo murmured, following her. "But you won't get far." The drive to the Moretti estate was a blur of rain-slicked streets and oppressive silence. Elena sat in the back of the armored SUV, Enzo beside her. He didn't speak, but he watched her. She could feel his gaze on her profile, analyzing, dissecting. She stared out the window, her mind racing. She had trained for this. She had protocols. But she hadn't accounted for Lorenzo Moretti being so perceptive. They pulled up to a massive, wrought iron gate. The estate was a fortress, surrounded by high walls and patrolling guards. As the gates groaned open, Elena felt the trap snap shut. The car stopped. Luca opened the door. "Welcome home," Enzo said, the sarcasm dripping from his voice. He escorted her into a grand foyer that looked like a museum, cold marble, priceless art, and devoid of warmth. "Luca, show Miss Vance to the guest wing, the East Suite." "The secure suite?" Luca clarified. "Yes, lock it from the outside. Put 2 men on the door." Enzo turned to Elena. "Make yourself comfortable. Dinner is at 8. "And Elena?" She turned to face him. "Do not try to run. The dogs are fed, but they enjoy the chase." Elena glared at him. "I'm not a rabbit, Mr. Moretti." Enzo stepped close. his hand cupping her chin, tilting her face up. His thumb brushed her lower lip, sending a shockwave through her body that she absolutely hated. "No," he whispered softly. "I don't think you are. You're a fox, and I'm going to enjoy taming you." He released her and walked away toward his study. Elena watched him go, her hands balled into fists. "Tame me," she thought. "I'm going to burn this house down around your ears." But first, she had to survive the night. This continues the Mafia romance drama, focusing on Elena's detention at the Moretti estate and the first major twist. The East Suite was less a prison cell and more a private apartment designed for a visiting dignitary. Italian marble, velvet upholstery, and windows that offered a breathtaking panoramic view of the Hudson River. Every luxury was present, except freedom. The door was solid mahogany, now sealed by a magnetic lock only Luca's thumbprint could open, and Elena knew the 2 armed guards posted outside were professionals, not easily fooled. Elena Vance, or rather, Erin Rossi, as her birth certificate read, moved through the opulent room like a ghost. She ran her hands over the silk drapes, testing the strength of the rod. Useless. She checked the windows. Triple-paned, reinforced, and locked with internal security mechanisms. The golden cage was impenetrable. She stripped off the beige suit, her costume of mediocrity, and changed into the plain, high-necked sweater and dark trousers she always kept in her emergency bag. She ate the prepared, lukewarm dinner brought by a silent maid, not out of hunger, but because survival required energy. Her mind was operating at maximum capacity, reviewing every interaction with Lorenzo Moretti. Why keep her? If he truly believed she was a Rossi, his family's historical enemy, killing her would be the pragmatic choice. The Morettis had been the primary beneficiaries of the Rossi Purge 7 years prior, absorbing their territory and influence. A survivor, even a hidden one, was a threat. Unless he needed her, the frantic call from Zia Rosa, her caretaker and the former accountant for the Rossi family, had mentioned the car was found. It meant their anonymous, quiet existence in the States was over. Someone else was hunting Erin. Someone who knew her real identity and was getting closer than the Morettis ever had. The sound of the magnetic lock clicking broke her concentration. She spun around as the mahogany door swung open. Enzo Moretti stood in the doorway. No Luca, no guards visible. He wore a simple, dark t-shirt and trousers now, the casual attire making him seem even larger and more dangerous. He carried a heavy, worn, leather-bound book. "I expected more," he said, stepping in and letting the door shut behind him. "No attempted fire, no broken chair legs." "Why waste the effort on a fortress?" Elena countered, leaning back against a window frame, projecting confidence she didn't feel. "You wanted to talk. Talk." Enzo tossed the book onto the velvet armchair. It landed with a dull thud. "This is the ledger of the Rossi family. It was retrieved from the wreckage of your father's villa outside Palermo." He tapped the cover. "It details every deal, every alliance, and every debt, including the debt your father, Niccolo, owed my father." "I don't care about history," she said flatly. "You should," Enzo said, his voice hardening. "This family feud isn't history. It's the air we breathe. 7 years ago, the Rossi organization imploded. Your father died in a tragic accident, along with your mother, Sophia." He paused, watching her closely. "There was a rumor, however. A rumor that Niccolo's younger sister, Chiara, managed to smuggle out the youngest daughter, the one too young to be registered in the books." He walked closer, his presence commanding the space. "Chiara was executed 3 years ago in Naples. So tell me, Erin Rossi, how did you end up answering a phone call in my boardroom, calling a woman named Rosa, and speaking the dialect of the Rossi Mountains?" Elena swallowed, her defense failing. He had all the pieces. "My name is Elena Vance," she insisted, weakly. "I was adopted. My adoptive family was Italian." "I know nothing about a feud." Enzo stopped a foot away. He reached out and lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his dark, unrelenting gaze. "Lies don't work with me, Cara," he said, the endearment sounding like a threat. "If you are the Rossi heir, I own you." Your bloodline owes me payment for my father's lost years and my family's stolen territory. You are leverage against whatever remains of your father's assets." He dropped his hand. "But there's a problem. The ledger says the Rossi organization was bled dry, nearly bankrupt, before they were eliminated. If you were hiding out for 7 years, where did you get the skills to move a self-destructing burner phone? And why would your last connection tell you they found the car?" He leaned in, his tone dropping to a dangerous whisper. "The truth, Aaron. Are you a runaway princess, or are you a trained operative?" Before she could form a reply, before she could decide whether to fight or confess, the world shattered. A muffled thump, followed by the immediate, ear-splitting sound of automatic gunfire, ripped through the estate walls. The sudden eruption of violence was not distant. It was right outside, echoing through the marble halls. The lights in the suite flickered, then died, plunging the room into pitch blackness. Enzo was instantly in motion. The second the first bullet hit the wall below, the calculating boss vanished, replaced by the instinctual soldier. "Stay down," he barked, shoving Elena hard toward the thick marble vanity in the bathroom. The force of the push was brutal, but effective. Elena didn't resist. The moment the gunfire started, her years of training resurfaced, scrubbing away the frightened assistant persona completely. The fear remained, but it was channeled into pure, cold adrenaline. "Secure the perimeter, code red." "Luca, report!" Enzo shouted into his radio, his voice strained. The response was static and a burst of screaming. "Luca!" "Your perimeter is compromised, Moretti," Elena said calmly from the bathroom doorway, her voice low and steady. "And judging by the silence, your man Luca is down." Enzo whirled toward her, illuminated briefly by the flashing emergency lights that kicked on, red, intermittent, and chaotic. "How do you know that?" "If he were alive, he would be reporting," she stated, grabbing a heavy glass pitcher from the vanity. "That burst of gunfire was high caliber. The hit is professional, not a warning." "Who did you call, Aaron?" Enzo demanded, drawing a compact handgun from the back of his trousers. "Is this a rescue attempt by the remnants of the Rossi?" "I told you, I called my Zia, and if I wanted to be rescued, I wouldn't be hiding behind your bathroom." She snapped back. "I was hiding from whoever they are. You just gave them an easy target by bringing me here." The sound of shattering glass came from the adjacent sitting room, followed by the heavy bootfalls of intruders. "They're coming through the lower windows, not the door." "Smart," Elena muttered, dropping the useless pitcher. Enzo looked at her. Her posture was completely different now. No slumped shoulders, no shaking hands. Her eyes, usually veiled, were now sharp, scanning the shadows. "You know how they fight," he observed, realizing the chilling truth. "I know how we fight," she admitted, finally dropping the lie. "My father was Niccolo Rossi. I am Elena Vance. And whoever is hitting your house, Moretti, they use specialized anti-detection munitions and suppressed high-rate assault rifles, signatures of the Vetter Group." The name hit Enzo with the force of a bullet. The Vetter Group was a shadowy, hyper-violent transnational cartel operating outside the traditional rules of the Mafia Commission. They were vultures who preyed on weakened families. "Vettore? They wouldn't touch this territory," Enzo hissed. "They just did. And they are looking for something specific. Not you. They are looking for the only person who knows where the Rossi contingency fund is buried," Aaron said. "Me." The bedroom door handle began to rattle violently. "They're using a shaped charge on the lock," Aaron analyzed, moving instantly toward the wardrobe. "You have 30 seconds. Where is the nearest exit or safe room?" Enzo was stunned, watching his captive transform into a warrior. The terrified assistant was gone. This woman moved like a cat and spoke with the authority of a field commander. "The study below has a bolt hole," he said, pointing to the wall behind the headboard. "It leads to the lower drainage tunnels. But we need to buy time." "Then let's buy some," Aaron said. In a move that defied her previous clumsy persona, she ripped the heavy silk drapes from the rod. using the thick fabric to create a makeshift barrier. She grabbed the 2 largest pillows from the bed and soaked them in the remaining water from the glass carafe. "Get behind the headboard and cover the radio," she ordered, her voice clipped and professional. "When the lock explodes, the blast will be directed inwards. You shoot the first man, I'll handle the second." Enzo looked from the small handgun in his hand to the fierce determination in her eyes. He was the boss, yet he was taking orders from the hidden daughter of his rival. "And how are you handling the second?" he asked, cynical but intrigued. Erin smiled, a dangerous, brief flash of teeth in the red light. She held up the 2 soaked pillows. "Temporary blinding device. Now move!" The door charge detonated with a deafening crack. Wood splinters flew. Smoke filled the room. The first Vittora soldier burst through the doorway, his silhouette backlit by the emergency lights, MP5 raised. Bang! Enzo's shot was clean. The man stumbled and fell, his weapon clattering. The second soldier, momentarily checking his fallen comrade, lunged into the smoke-filled opening. Before he could raise his weapon, Erin darted forward, throwing the soaking wet pillows directly into his face. The sudden, cold impact momentarily disoriented him, soaking his tactical goggles and obscuring his vision. Erin didn't hesitate. She grabbed the clattering MP5 from the floor and swung the heavy barrel with shocking force, connecting with the side of the second soldier's helmet. He went down in a heap, unconscious before he hit the ground. Erin stood over him, the MP5 steady in her hands, breathing hard. The smoke cleared slightly. Enzo stared at her, the gun still raised. "The drainage tunnel, Moretti, now!" she yelled, already kicking the downed soldier's rifle away. He nodded, finally snapping out of his shock. He had just witnessed the reserved, quiet secretary take down a trained assassin with a damp pillow and a rifle butt. He moved the heavy headboard, revealing a steel door. Erin stepped past him, MP5 ready, covering the door while he struggled with the lock. "I need your gun, too," she instructed. "The tunnels are dark and narrow. We fight our way out, or we die here." Enzo hesitated for a fraction of a second, then slid his compact Glock across the floor to her. It was the ultimate trust, or the ultimate folly. He watched as she expertly checked the magazine and chambered a round. "You knew the Vittori signature," Enzo stated as the steel door hissed open. "You knew the contingency fund." "Who are you really, Erin?" She looked back at him, her face grim in the red light. "I am the woman who is going to save your life," she said, stepping into the darkness of the passage. "And after that, Moretti, we negotiate my freedom." Enzo followed her into the dark. He had lost his estate, his guards, and perhaps his control, but he had gained a fascinating, deadly enemy who was now his only shield. He realized, with a sickening jolt of respect, that the woman he thought he held captive was actually the only weapon he had left. The drainage tunnel reeked of mildew and wet earth. It was a suffocatingly dark, narrow space, forcing Enzo and Erin to move single file, their shoulders scraping against the damp concrete walls. Erin led the way, the heavy MP5 feeling surprisingly natural in her hands, her tactical light cutting through the oppressive blackness. Enzo followed, carrying the Glock she had handed him after he proved useless with the MP5. They emerged an hour later, scrambling through a camouflaged maintenance hatch hidden in a copse of old oak trees, nearly a mile from the main house. The air was cold, sharp, with the smell of pine and distant smoke. The Moretti estate was still ablaze, a silent testament to the Vittori group's efficiency. "My house is gone," Enzo stated, his voice flat. Devoid of the usual arrogance, he pulled out a sleek satellite phone. "They neutralized the entire security detail. This wasn't a warning, Erin. This was an eradication." Erin scanned the perimeter. "They didn't pursue us here. They were focused on the house. They didn't know the bolt hole existed, or they didn't care. They got what they came for." "And what was that?" Enzo demanded, already dialing a number. The assurance that their primary target, me, was in the house when it exploded, Erin replied, checking the MP5's action. "They wanted to confirm the death of the Rossi heir. That way, no one looks for the contingency fund." Enzo's eyes narrowed. "What fund?" The ledger said the coffers were empty. The ledger was fake, a distraction. Erin pulled a heavy antique silver signet ring from a chain under her sweater. It bore the crest of the old Rossi family. The Rossi wealth wasn't in cash or property. It was in bearer bonds and offshore gold reserves locked down with a triple-key system. My father knew the end was coming. She put the ring away. One key is the crest, proof of lineage. One key is a complex numerical sequence locked in my memory. The third key was the ledger itself, a microdot hidden in the leather binding. Enzo stared at the leather book he had tossed onto the armchair back in the suite. The ledger is still in the burning house. Exactly, Erin confirmed, her gaze chillingly steady. They hit your house for 2 reasons: to eliminate me, and to destroy the last piece of tangible evidence connecting the fund to the family. They didn't want the Vittor group to claim it. They wanted it to disappear into the smoke. Enzo swore in rapid, harsh Italian, the dialect even older and rougher than hers. He finished his call. My consigliere, Carlo Vitali, is sending a clean car to a discreet location 10 miles from here. We have 45 minutes to get there. After tonight, New York is too hot. We're going to my secondary safe house in Connecticut. We? Erin challenged. I saved your life. I held the gun. The deal was freedom. Enzo looked at the smoke plume rising from his ruined estate, then back at the fierce, beautiful woman standing before him in the dirt. You saved my life so you could negotiate, not run, Erin, he said, using her true name for the first time, without malice, almost with respect. You have the memory key. I have the resources, the muscle, and the intelligence network. The Vittor Group wants your fund because they are planning a hostile takeover of the entire East Coast operation. The people who ordered this hit, they are the people who ordered my father's death, and they are the people who ordered yours. We are both hunted, and we need each other. That is the only deal on the table. He held out his hand. An alliance, Erin. Enemies working toward a common goal, survival and revenge. If we retrieve the fund, half is yours. If we secure my territory, I will ensure your anonymity. Do you trust me? I don't trust the air I breathe when you're in the room, Moretti, she replied, her voice laced with venom. But I understand logic, and I understand the Vittor Group. They'll hunt us to the ends of the earth. We move. She refused his hand, turning instantly and setting a fast, purposeful pace through the underbrush toward the highway. Enzo watched her go, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his lips. He picked up his pace to match hers. The rules of the game had fundamentally changed. He no longer had a captive. He had a partner. And he finally understood the true depth of the cold, lethal capability hiding behind the eyes of the former secretary. The secondary safe house was a modest, isolated cabin overlooking a frozen lake in rural Connecticut, secured only by remote sensors and deep woods. It was Spartan, a stark contrast to the mansion's opulence. Inside, sitting across a rough wooden table, the 2 leaders, the former boss and the hidden heiress, began their uncomfortable alliance. Erin was cleaning the MP5. Enzo was reviewing data pulled from Carlo Vitali's flash drive. The Vittor hit was a diversion, Enzo reported, tapping the table. While they were blowing up the estate, they were also hitting 3 of my key supply depots in Brooklyn. Not taking the goods, just destroying the infrastructure. They're crippling the operation. Standard Vittor protocol, Erin confirmed without looking up. Chaos and targeted resource denial. They don't want territory yet. They want you weak enough to negotiate, surrender, or dead enough to absorb. Tell me about the fund, Enzo ordered. Where is the money now? Erin placed the cleaned rifle on the table. The bonds are diversified across 3 Swiss banks. The gold is in a private vault, registered under a shell corporation named Valerius Enterprises. And the sequence? 7 years of memory work, she said, her expression hardening. A sequence based on 3 dates. My mother's birthday, the date of my father's wedding, and the date of the great earthquake in Calabria. Enzo leaned back, intrigued. Calabria? That's not Sicilian. My mother, Sophia, was Calabrese. My father was sentimental. The security key is a sequence of 3 sets of prime numbers, each set derived from those dates. If I miss one digit, the system locks us out forever. The weight of the entire Rossi legacy, millions in wealth and power, rested on her perfect recall. Enzo's gaze softened slightly, transitioning from boss to something more protective. That's a heavy burden for 7 years. I don't need your sympathy, Moretti. I need access to your network. The Vittor group hit your house because they traced the initial call from Zia Rosa. Rosa wasn't compromised. The phone lines were. Someone in New York intelligence is feeding them information. The moles are everywhere, Enzo sighed, running a hand over his tired face. I suspect Senator Grant's office. He's been pushing aggressive anti-crime legislation right when Vittore moved in. We need to be proactive, Aaron insisted, pushing the MP5 across the table. They think I'm dead. We have a window of opportunity, maybe 48 hours, before they check the wreckage and realize I'm missing. She stood up and paced the small cabin floor. The biggest weakness Vittore has is its leadership. Their North American operation is currently led by a field commander named Silvio, the butcher Marino. Marino is ruthless, but predictable. He hates being undermined. If we leak information that implicates him in a failed, high-profile assassination, say, the failure to kill Lorenzo Moretti, his superiors will cut him loose. Enzo watched her, mesmerized by her sharp strategic mind. This was not the daughter of a rival. This was a weapon. You're proposing a counterintelligence and misdirection campaign, he summarized. We lure Marino out, eliminate him, then use the resulting chaos to secure the fund, and finally, rebuild my operation. We eliminate him, retrieve the fund, and then I walk away, Aaron corrected him firmly. But first, we need a base of operations that is completely untraceable. And we need to find Zia Rosa and bring her in. She is the only person left who knows where I was hiding. Enzo stood up, his height dominating the small space. He walked around the table until he was standing directly behind her, his hand resting on the back of her neck. His touch sent a tremor of both revulsion and intense awareness through her. One detail, Aaron, he murmured, his voice rough. You're asking me to commit to a full-scale war, putting my remaining men at risk for a fund that may not even exist, based only on your word. She didn't flinch. She simply turned her head, her face dangerously close to his. You're committing to war because it's the only path to survival, Moretti, and that fund exists. It is the key to rebuilding your organization better than before. But the moment we are safe, the moment the Vittor threat is neutralized, I walk away, and if you try to stop me, she promised, her eyes burning with cold fire, I will use everything I learned in the dark to dismantle you and what remains of your empire. Enzo let out a low, breathy laugh. It was a sound of grudging admiration. He removed his hand. A conditional alliance, he conceded, stepping back to give her space. Agreed. Now let's begin. Where is the first place Marino will look after he realizes the Rossi ghost is still alive? Aaron pulled a worn, laminated map of the New England coastline from her bag. He will look for the last person who called me, she said, pointing to a small, isolated seaside town. Zia Rosa. She's in Newport, Rhode Island. We move at dawn. The seaside town of Newport, Rhode Island was cold and quiet, wrapped in the bleak gray of a late autumn morning. Aaron and Enzo, having driven through the night, staked out the modest, unassuming duplex where Zia Rosa, the last connection to the Rossi past, had been hiding. Marino's men will be here already, Aaron whispered, watching the house from their parked SUV. He won't wait. He'll want the bond keys, and he'll want them fast. We need a distraction, Enzo said, his hand resting on the center console, close to his handgun. My remaining men are in transit. We're alone on this. No, Aaron corrected, a familiar cold glint in her eyes. We use what we have. Marino underestimates you because he thinks you're just a capo. He underestimates me because he thinks I'm dead. We use the element of surprise. Aaron outlined a plan that was audacious, reckless, and surgically precise. It relied on Enzo drawing the Vittore forces out while she infiltrated the duplex to secure Zia Rosa and simultaneously leak the false intelligence intended to destroy Silvio Marino. Enzo took the bait. He drove the SUV conspicuously down the street, turning the corner near the duplex and making sure the Vittor lookout, a man sitting in a black sedan, saw his face. As expected, the sedan immediately roared to life and blocked the street, its occupants spilling out, weapons drawn. "It's Moretti! Take him!" a voice shouted. The diversion was successful. Enzo abandoned the SUV, retreating into the tight network of alleyways, drawing the bulk of the Vittor muscle, including their elite sniper team, away from the duplex. Meanwhile, Erin moved like a shadow. Using a forgotten cellar entrance, she slipped into the duplex. She found Zia Rosa in the kitchen, a fragile woman who, despite her fear, immediately embraced Erin. "They came yesterday, Erin," Rosa whispered frantically. "They found my encryption logs. They know you're the key." "Who came, Rosa?" "Not Marino, his superior, a man named Marcus Thorne. He leads the Vettere financial operations. He said Marino was too clumsy. Thorne is here. He's the one controlling the hunt." Erin's mind raced. This was the twist. Thorne, the financier, not Marino, the brute. She had been targeting the wrong man. Marino was a distraction, just as Enzo was. Thorne wanted the fund, and he was likely the source of the high-level intelligence leak. She helped Rosa into the crawl space, securing her. "Stay here, don't make a sound." Erin ascended the stairs. In the main bedroom, the source of the Vittor intelligence leak was clear, a complex satellite uplink, humming softly next to a laptop displaying real-time tracking of the Moretti organization assets. Sitting in the armchair, reviewing encrypted files, was a man in a crisp suit, the nervous CEO from the boardroom, the man she had worked for. "Marcus Sterling," Erin said, stepping into the doorway, the MP5 leveled at his chest. "I should have known the stench of deceit was too corporate for a common killer." Sterling looked up, not surprised, only mildly annoyed. "Elena Vance. Or is it Erin Rossi? I was hoping you were dead. You've complicated a very lucrative acquisition." "You were the mole," she stated. "You worked with Moretti just long enough to gather the security details, then handed them to Thorne for a hefty cut. You orchestrated the Vittor hit." "Thorne is a brilliant strategist," Sterling sneered, slowly raising his hands. He realized the true value of the Rossi legacy. Not the old world territory, but the untraceable digital assets. And who better to deliver the heir to him than the unassuming personal assistant? "I brought you straight to Moretti's table." "Where is Thorne?" Erin demanded. "Close. He's here to finalize the transfer of the Valerius assets. If you're smart, you'll join us. Thorne has the power to protect you. Moretti is obsolete." Just then, a flash of movement came from the window, the reflection of a scope. "Get down!" Erin yelled, shoving Sterling out of the chair and diving for cover behind the heavy dresser. A sniper shot pulverized the window pane above them. The Vettere group hadn't sent a kill team. They had sent a small, coordinated execution squad, targeting only the leadership. Erin knew the plan had to change. She wasn't fighting Marino. She was fighting a sophisticated corporate execution. She needed to draw out Thorne. She grabbed the laptop, smashed the satellite uplink with the butt of the MP5, and threw the laptop out the window. "No assets are transferable today, Sterling." "Thorne loses control." "You stupid girl," Sterling screamed, scrambling away from the window. Erin didn't follow him. She knew where the real battle was. Outside, with Enzo. She raced out of the house. The street was chaotic. Enzo was pinned down behind a dumpster, exchanging fire with two men. The rest of the Vettere squad was securing the perimeter. "Erin, they're hitting the exits!" Enzo yelled, reloading the Glock. "It's not Marino. It's Marcus Sterling and a man named Thorne. They're hitting the financial infrastructure," she shouted over the gunfire. She immediately opened fire on the Vittori sedan, aiming for the engine block. The sound was deafening, the car's alarm blaring. The distraction drew the remaining two Vittori gunmen toward them. In that critical moment, Enzo saw his opening. He surged from behind the dumpster, taking down the first gunman with a double tap. Erin focused on the second gunman, running toward him. She closed the distance, utilizing her hand-to-hand combat training, avoiding his wild shots. She sidestepped his charge and brought the MP5 up, not to shoot, but to hook the barrel around his neck, pulling him into an instant chokehold. The professional operative came roaring to the surface. She squeezed, and the man dropped, unconscious. Silence fell, broken only by the continuous shriek of the car alarm. Enzo stood over the fallen Vittore soldiers, breathing hard. He was covered in grime and blood that wasn't his own. He looked at Erin, who stood with the MP5 ready, her eyes wide, scanning the rooftops. "Sterling is gone. Thorne has escaped," Erin said, her voice tight with adrenaline. "But they know we're alive, and they know the contingency fund is still locked." 3 days later, Erin and Enzo sat in a secured conference room miles away, their alliance solidified by shared danger and mutual respect. Enzo's consigliere, Carlo Vitali, had retrieved Zia Rosa and secured the remaining loyal Moretti assets. The Vittore group had retreated into the shadows, reeling from the sudden coordinated loss of their key field operatives. "Marino is dead. Thorne is facing a shareholder revolt because he failed to secure the Valerius assets," Enzo stated, pushing a freshly drawn contract across the table. "Your sequence is safe. My territory is stabilized." Erin didn't touch the contract. "The terms of the alliance are fulfilled, Moretti. My freedom." "The Vittore group is not finished, Erin," Enzo countered. "Thorne knows your name. He knows the sequence is in your head. Walking away now is walking into his crosshairs alone. He'll hit you the second I can no longer track you." He tapped the contract. "This is a new agreement. I'm not offering you freedom. I'm offering you protection and power." Erin finally looked at the paper. It wasn't an agreement detailing her debt. It was a partnership agreement. It named her as the chief financial strategist for the restructured Moretti Rossi operations. The contract guaranteed her 50% ownership of the contingency fund and, critically, guaranteed her complete control over her personal security and movements. "You're offering me a contract?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "You are the only person who sees the board 3 steps ahead of me," Enzo said, leaning in. "You don't belong in the dark, Erin. You belong here, next to me, securing this empire. I need your mind to survive the next decade, and you need my shield to survive the next week." He met her gaze, his expression intense. "I let you go, you die. You stay, we conquer. I'm not making you my captive, Erin. I'm making you my equal, my partner." Erin considered the choice: loneliness, constant fear, and eventual death by a Vittore assassin, or a life of power, security, and endless confrontation, standing next to the only man who had ever truly seen her capability. The decision was logical, if deeply unsettling. She picked up the pen. "The contract is ironclad, Moretti. If you ever break your word, if you ever try to limit my power, I will take the fund and the empire and walk away." "Fair enough," Enzo said, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. Erin signed the document. Elena Vance, Rossi. As she pushed the papers back to him, Enzo reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "Just one more condition," he said, his voice dropping to a low, possessive rumble. "Don't ever answer a call in Palermitano in front of me again. It's too distracting." "I make no promises, Lorenzo," she replied, pulling her hand away, but the cold fire in her eyes now mixed with an undeniable spark of challenge. The golden cage was gone. The battlefield was now their shared domain. Elena Vance, the unassuming secretary, became Erin Rossi, the unstoppable co-leader of the New York operations. Her mistake, a single whispered word in a deadly dialect, didn't lead to her death. It led to her destiny. Lorenzo Moretti, the cold-blooded Capo, thought he had found a captive, but he found a queen. They started as enemies forced into an alliance, driven by a mutual need for revenge and survival, and ended as a contract, bound by iron and power. The Vittore group is temporarily defeated, but Marcus Thorne is still out there, and the newly forged Moretti-Rossi partnership has only just begun. What twists do you think lie ahead for this dangerous duo? If you were Erin, would you have signed the contract or risked freedom? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you loved the drama and the twists. Share this epic story with a friend who loves Mafia romance, and make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next dramatic chapter of The Contract of Iron.